good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Weekly Spark. This is our first episode for April, and I'm trying something a little bit different. First off, my new dog is currently napping on her dog bed in the studio, so hopefully I can get the intro to this filmed before she starts barking and making a lot of noise. Working with the key as a motif for this month, I decided that I wanted to carve a key stamp because I wanted something that I could do that was elaborate instead of, a real simple key design. I have a real simple repeat key design that I've used before, but I wanted to do something that was more detailed for this one. And that would be, I think, a fun way to have the key in different art journal pages for this month. So what I have on here is a real quick sketch, but before we go there, let me tell you about the materials that I'm working with. Sometimes I use regular linoleum. This comes in gray. Sometimes it's called battleship linoleum. Sometimes it's unbacked like this. Sometimes it has a big, thick, chunky particle board piece of wood on the back of it. This is the hardest of all these kind of linoleum type materials to carve. There's a material that's called Easy Carve, and everybody makes one. Speedball makes one, Dick Blick makes one. Basically, it's this kind of rubbery material. It's very similar to a plastic eraser. In fact, I've used these plastic erasers as small carving blocks before. This one's pretty thick. The nice thing about a thick one is that I could carve into each side. It's thick enough that I probably won't go through, and that way I can get a twofer. Some of the ones that I have is much thinner. So here's a coffee cup that I've carved, and you see there's nothing on the back because it is pretty thin. This one was thicker. It's a different brand, so a different color, and I have a little goddess image there, and then a solid goddess image there. So all of these are different printmaking materials that are really easy to carve. We used to do linoleum when I was in middle school. I used to teach this with my middle schoolers and my high schoolers, and it can be tough. You sometimes have to put a good bit of force in carving into this, and so that's why this contraption that you see here on the table is such a good idea. Apologize, I know that shook everything, but you're carving with this implement, this device that we'll talk about later, and you have to guide it and push. And so you want to have this as both your stopper for your tool, but as the place to hold your block that you're carving, because you can't carve with your finger in the direction where it might get hit. So this was something we always did to protect the students. You could hold it, you could carve, you'd have to turn it, and you'd have to rearrange things, but you're always carving away from you. So sure, sometimes you might have to curve around, but still, this is, even if I slip, it's not going anywhere near my hand. With the Easy Carve, you can get away with being a little more careful, but even if you're holding it and turning the block, you've got to keep your fingers behind the tool so that you're not carving towards your fingers. Even with the Easy Carve stuff, the really rubbery stuff that's so easy to carve, you can slip and cut yourself. So there's your safety lecture. This is a Speedball linoleum cutter. Other blades are stored in the handle. Here, I'll take it apart and show you. Okay. Here's what it looks like inside. There's the basic piece that is what you're attaching your blade to, and then this little other cap that goes on top of that. And so the blade, when you're inserting it into the handle, it's going to go in between those two. so that when you tighten down the collar, that's going to be tightened in between, pinched in between the two and held securely. So with it loose, I'm going to put in the fine detailed gauge, which I use for outlining, tighten it up, not going to come out. The other cutters, here are two different ones shaped like V's. I hope that the camera is focusing on that. And then here are two different shaped more like U's, a closed U and an open U. So for large areas in the background, you can quickly take away a lot of material. What I want to do now is kind of fine tune this. I've just got some Sharpie here because this pencil sketch is a bit kind of loosey-goosey. The thick Sharpie is definitely not the one that I wanted to work. But I'm going to go ahead and start this for the outline of it. Some people like to do Sharpie on the whole background so that they can clearly see when they have removed everything that they don't want to carve. I'm carving away the background so that my key will be raised up and my key will print. I could, in the reverse of that, leave the surface printing and carve out the shape of the key. That would give me the printing of a solid rectangle with the key being see-through, revealing the paper underneath. And this is very preliminary. I'm going to do a lot of fine-tuning to this, but I just wanted to kind of talk you through the first stages before I really focus and, probably put on some YouTube music and speed up the video a bit. That one went a little too deep and it tore a little bit. You can always take away more. You can't put it back on. So when I do the background, I like to do kind of concentric lines radiating out from the image because I like to have a little bit of that kind of print so that it gives some of that movement and shows some of the marks. You'll see where there's black on these. Those were a little bit more raised up and they did print with the coffee cup. You can, of course, carve it all the way down so you have a really, really clean printing block. It's up to personal preference. Because they are flexible, even if you carve deeper, sometimes you can just apply more pressure and get a little bit of that kind of background texture to show anyway. I'm using a deep V gouge. I could also switch to one of the U gouges because that would be a little less stripy and maybe have fewer lines showing up in the background. But you see, I'm holding this like a pencil. I'm not putting any pressure on the tool. It's gliding forwards. When you're using the brown or the gray, like kind of battleship linoleum is what they call it, then you often have to use this tool, have that in the palm of your hand, and put more pressure on it in this kind of position. So the easy carve is nice because it doesn't tire your hand out, and I feel like I have more control. So I'm going to grab a stamp pad and we're going to test this just so you can get a sense of what's happening. So you can see the lines in the background, you can see the key, and the key is going to change a lot before it's done, but that's kind of the preliminary. That background is fine by me. I might take away one of those, just so it's not too stripy. Okay, now I kind of have to redraw my key now, which is fine because it was a little, I can still pretty much see what's happening. So I'm not going for really clean and precise. I'm okay if it is a little asymmetrical. I want it to look like I carved it. And so this will definitely be kind of my style of things. Let me pause here and let that ink dry for a sec, and then I will zoom in and start carving the details on the key. Now that the outlines are sort of done, let's test it with a different color before I carve away the background, like the negative space inside the head of the key. Okay, some lines to clean up over here, but then I'm going to remove all that negative space. Excellent. It's looking okay so far. And I'm putting the paper on top of the stamp and rubbing so that I know I get really good contact everywhere. All right. So I don't love that corner, but I can't add back to it. So I'll just try and clean up the line so it's not quite so messy. I definitely want to finesse this section on like the neck of the key. This prints okay on the bottom. When I'm using this in an art journal page, I could print it like I'm doing now onto a separate piece of paper if I really wanted to get all that background information, or I could just ink it up and press it onto the page like a regular stamp. So here are the differences. I did a little messy kind of cross-hatching there. Don't love it, but okay, it's done now. Really noticing the difference in thickness on this bottom of the key. This side is so much thicker. It doesn't even look that much thicker on this rubber, but it looks a lot thicker when it's printed. I'm going to open that up a little bit because we can. And I think we're going to make the key skinnier overall. Sometimes it's nice to have two of these handles so that you're not switching back and forth all the time. think we're pretty close. It is a large, elaborate key. That's for sure. Okay, I think we're there. Now, if this is your first time trying to carve something with the Easy Carve, maybe go for a real simple, like standard kind of skeleton key. Maybe don't go for all the curly cues right at first. So that's my key. I like it. And stay tuned next week because you'll see me use this stamp in one of my art journal pages. So as always, you can like and subscribe if you liked this video. Also, please remember to check out on my blog where there is an inspirational post for this month with some images and some different mythological kinds of keys. So until then, enjoy and hope this unlocks some creativity for you, pun intended, and I will see you next week.